This is some of the aftermath from the latest Russian bombardment of Kyiv as the offensive edges toward the city center. Residential neighborhoods have been hit for a second day in a row, and Ukrainian officials say this morning at least 2 people are dead. The attacks happened just hours before another round of talks are set to begin today between Ukrainian and Russian negotiators. In his late-night video address, President Zelensky says Monday's talks went, in his word, pretty good. And he had this message for rank-and-file Russian troops.
On behalf of the Ukrainian people, I give you a chance to survive. If you surrender to our forces, we will treat you the way people are supposed to be treated, as people, decently, in a way you were not treated in your own army, and in a way your army does not treat ours. Choose.
Now, these are more images in from Kyiv this morning. A photo showing a woman waiting to be rescued from one of the burning apartment blocks hit by the Russian bombardment. We also have pictures today showing the damage from a blast wave to a subway station entrance. So it shows you what is happening in Ukraine's capital as we come on the air with you this morning. We begin our coverage in Lviv, Ukraine, with David Common. And David, just as we were starting to talk to you, on my computer I'm getting what is a big red headline saying Ukraine issues a country-wide air raid siren warning. Number one, I see all sorts of people behind you. What is happening right now?
Well, I am at a reception center, Heather, for people who have had to leave their homes. So in places like Mariupol or Kyiv, they're coming here. They're not leaving the country, but coming here to what is relative safety in Lviv. Now, I say relative safety. You talk about that air raid siren. The alarms have been sounding through parts of the morning. I will just say that if people were to take cover every single time the air raid sirens go off, they wouldn't necessarily ever come outside because there is a considerable frequency to it. So many people are coming from areas where they have taken cover, but only taken cover after, I dare say it, a boom, after there's been a detonation nearby them. So many of the people here now coming to get whatever supplies they can get. They may not have come with very much. And this comes at the same time that we're hearing about a curfew being put in place effective tonight in Kyiv, in the capital. 35 hours it will last. And when we have seen curfews of that duration in the past, it is both an effort to try to protect the civilian population, which largely remains in these cities, but also a reflection of the fact that they believe an escalation in Russian forces' attacks is imminent. One of the concerns always is you don't want to have Ukrainian civilians out on the street who might get confused for being Russian saboteurs and come under attack themselves. Plus, just the intensity of the bombardments, particularly striking at residential areas, can cause, as we have seen, enormous loss of life and destruction.
Okay, well, just let me know, David, if you have to leave, if there's any sign of concern and these sirens going off, concerned about you there. What we're hearing, David, just now from a briefing from Mariupol City Council, the people in that city, besieged city, they'll be trying to get more people away from communities like Mariupol. We're hearing from City Council that about 300 of its citizens have reached Zaporizhia. They got about 160 cars out of that city yesterday. Today, again, the focus on civilian corridors. What is the focus for today? What is the plan today?
Once again, attempts at humanitarian corridors to get people out. It really is just a small number of people who got out, and the picture that they're painting about what's happening inside that city is one of utter destruction. They're talking about food and water that is running out, electricity that no longer runs, heat that no longer runs, and being forced to take shelter essentially at all times. Just remember that for all of the scenes like this of people leaving their homes, there are far more Ukrainians who have stayed in their cities, sometimes by choice, sometimes because they simply don't have a safe route out, or safer route out amidst the constant bombardment. And so that's why you have people end up in places like this. You speak about Mariupol, which has faced sustained attacks. CBC News was able to speak to the deputy mayor of that city, and let's play a bit of that for you now.
We still are in the full blockade from Russian troops, and without any utility we still have lack of water, lack of food, lack of medicine, and lack of safety. So each day takes off a lot, hundreds of life of our citizens.
Gives you a sense, Heather, of the impacts, and yet it is still striking the defiance not just of the people, but the resistance of the military facing off against a what was long seen as a well-equipped professional army that had considerable experience in conflict environments, but has not been able to make major advances, even in recent days, and yet takes a different approach, firing, perhaps indiscriminately, it would seem, in enormous amounts of ordnance directed at cities.
David, when we were last speaking to you yesterday, you were right near the Polish border where that military training camp was hit by dozens of Russian airstrikes over the weekend. We know that foreign volunteers had been there, and a key question since has been whether there were any Canadians at the time there and whether any were hurt. What are we learning this morning?
Well, there are indeed reports, Heather, that there was a Canadian who was at that Yavorov military training base. It is a base that had been used by Canadian soldiers and many other NATO forces in years past to train alongside the Ukrainian army. This was not that. It was not a formal soldier. I'm just going to pull the camera up this way just to get away from some traffic that's moving in here. But just to give you a sense, there is a report that at least one Canadian was injured in those attacks and has now made his way out of the country and is being helped to ensure that his wounds are being properly cared for. That is the indication that we have. And I'm going to pull you again this way, that there is at least one Canadian who has been involved in that. Whether there are others who were training at that base, certainly the suggestion that Canadians or that Western volunteers were being trained at that base to join this fight. Even when we came across the border from Poland some days ago, one of the first things you see, Heather, is a tent that says Foreign Soldiers Help Desk. So the moment you cross, if you're someone who's got experience, well, Ukrainian military is looking for you, and we know that a large number of Canadians have indeed crossed and attempted at least to join up with the Ukrainian resistance.
David, there will be doubtless more on this today. Thank you very much. Extraordinary reporting as always, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again this morning. That's our David Common.